Work, be diligent, study, shut out the noise. Being true to yourself is what matters. A lot of people are just doing good enough for the gram. I want it to be razor sharp in real life. I want it to be perfect. As much as the world can be ugly, the human is beautiful.
So here we are today at the Get Busy podcast, and I am really excited to sit down with you, Mez Data, muralist, artist, imaginer, dreamer. I don't get an opportunity to talk to artists as much as I would like to because, you know, we cover entrepreneurship, but really what you do is the ultimate form of entrepreneurship. You're balancing art, you're balancing business. You know, we were just talking about, you know, you can't really come up and hang out in Colorado because you get called out onto jobs. But one of the things I want to start with is, you know, the role of art, the importance of art. You're a muralist. Your work is all over Austin. You are a very well-known painter of walls, huge, beautiful art, big, bold color. And I just want to, sometimes we forget how important art is to our culture. So can you talk a little bit about that?
One aspect that I feel like a lot of people tend to not realize or comprehend the magnitude of is the quality of life that art brings to your environment. It can brighten your day. It can help you think. It can give you a message. It can, you know, there's a lot of things versus, you know, these drab, sterile environments that we sometimes become accustomed to. That's one aspect of it that I really, strive for and really try to utilize is the importance of art in our daily lives. Because, you know, think about even the simplest thing, like if you go out to eat, the packaging of the food that you receive. You know, if it's bland and boring or whatever, you know, it may taste great, but it's going to taste better if it looks good.
Keep going.
And it's presented well.
Right.
So I think people forget that it's important to have art and murals and things around you to improve your quality of life and your mindset.
Do you think, are we at a point in time? I agree with you. I think art is, you know, it's not just window dressing.
Right.
Art is a moment in time. It captures the history. It captures the politic. Mm-hmm. It captures the essence of an epoch, mm-hmm. right? Like each moment that we capture in art is one that is memorialized in some way, right? How do you, I worry about art right now, you know, especially with new things that are coming on, like AI, right? Disinformation, right? Like all of this agitprop that is happening on social media. Like, what is how do you deal with that? It's heavy, right? Mm-hmm. Like what you do is beautiful, but there's a burden to it as well.
I've actually started to try to harness the beauty of the humanity of art.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much art that we have in our lives that's dictated by computers. Film, 3D animation, graphic design, a lot of stuff like that. Now we have the AI introduction, which I've seen AI do some really amazing stuff. Yeah. But, and I was kind of into the NFT thing for a while, but now because of these issues, and even the political and misinformation aspect of it, I've actually started to try to move more into sort of the human aspect of it, really trying to push myself artistically to be better, and not to be as good as AI, as strange as that sounds. But
you're letting them win.
But I guess more so human potential,
right? To
show how good a human can be, or to push myself as a human to be better and to be good. And then on the political side of it, I used to have pretty politically charged work and a lot of statements and things like that. But as you said, our environment has gotten a little bit more intense with a lot of that, and there's a lot more people, I think, putting those efforts out there where me, on the other hand, I've tried to actually reduce it. And I've actually tried to go the opposite direction where now I'm trying to do art that kind of speaks a bit more to the soul and to the heart rather than the mind or these ideological angles that I used to take earlier on in my work. For example, I just recently did a painting on the side of a building downtown Austin, and it's typically used for advertising work, but I had an opportunity to just do a piece of art as a placeholder until they put up another ad. So as I was like going through, what I want to do, because I have the opportunity to do whatever I want, I really ended up wanting to do something that was just pretty and peaceful.
Yeah.
Especially for that intersection because it's downtown. There's a lot of, vagrants and, a lot of things. Chaos, the drinking and stuff. So I wanted to create a piece that was just pretty to look at and calming. So I did like this, girl with like these beautiful clouds and like, a horizon, and just, I wanted to bring peace. So to your point, I guess I'm seeing this and I'm trying to do my part to bring a bit of relief from the AI and the politics and the intenseness that we have right now.
I think we need that. We need more relief, I think, sometimes. And I think art is part of the solution to that. And, your paintings are glorious, right? They are colorful. They are, sweeping shapes. They are textured and layered and just, they're absolutely, a feast for the eyes. You were talking earlier about, you want to capture and represent humanity. Mm-hmm. What is that, like how, in words, how would you describe what that means?
We're special. We're unique. We're not autonomous. We're all different. And we're beautiful. As much as the world can be ugly, the human is beautiful. We create, we make things. And we create wonderful things, from society to food to, music to art. And while other species can, use tools, they don't create.
Right.
They can make, but they don't create. And that's where, to try and glorify the humanity in my artwork.
People are cool.
People are cool.
Like that's the thing that, even after this day and this week talking to people, is that, getting to speak to artists and creators and makers and inventors restores your faith in humanity, right? Like people are cool. Yeah. And murals are cool. And so, talk to me a little bit about the art of creating a mural. Like, why does it matter, right? Like, how is a mural different than graffiti? Are they the same? Like, how does this work in your head?
Well, I come from graffiti.
I know.
So to me,
I know. I was hoping you'd go down that road. Graffiti is an important part of history, by the way.
Right.
There's graffiti in Pompeii. Yeah. Right.
Kilroy from World War One. Yeah. So graffiti has a long history. So in today's time, and almost I would say vernacular, people kind of use the word interchangeably, street art and graffiti and stuff like that. Where now I notice that a lot of people are kind of attributing anything done with spray paint, they're saying, is graffiti.
Okay.
Or even street art. Or as somebody from graffiti, I see them clearly differently, way different.
Right.
Graffiti, is letter-based and it's foundation. So it starts from letters and then we can
turn it into something.
Characters and backgrounds and all the other stuff, right? But its foundation is letters, where street art and murals has a foundation of objects, whether it's people or buildings or landscape or whatever, right? So icons versus letters. Yeah. So I think if we can establish that foundation, then we can start to see the cross-pollination and where things intertwine or separate.
And don't you think they're both important art forms?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Graffiti is, it is, again, like that art captures the spirit of a moment in time, right? So talk about like why these are important art forms.
Graffiti spoke to me as an important art form in my early development as a voice.
Yeah.
For sort of the voiceless,
Yeah.
right? I saw it as a way to get out there and put myself out there without the approval or the gatekeeping that exists in other areas, even in the art world, right? Like I notice in the art world, you know, it's galleries, and you know this person and this collector, and then they get you.
It's
on
like a thing,
you know, and it's not always merit based,
right?
Whereas graffiti, it's pretty much only merit based. Like you have to put in the work, you have to go out there, and there's nobody really stopping you except other graffiti artists, and that's only if you let them. Because if you get to a certain point, then you get their respect, and then you know what I mean?
Okay, so hang on a second. So, go through this process of earning the respect. Like it is an art form, right? So it's
Very
like
much.
you have to earn. What is that like? How does that look? Like it's letters. Like I didn't know that graffiti was based on like using letters as a foundation. Like how do you earn street cred as a graffiti artist?
I mean, the primary way is through the street. Like you have to do the work. You can't be a
Train
part-time
cars. Like, I like the train car ones.
You know,
Bridges,
walls, billboards, whatever. You know, box trucks, whatever.
Right. Weirdly high signs that nobody knows how they get up on.
Right.
It. Yeah.
We call those heavens.
And,
but yeah, so that's the main way. Is, if you're going to get into graffiti and you really want to have respect amongst the graffiti community, you have to do graffiti. And not the art form graffiti. You have to go and vandalize things.
Right.
And then, through that also, too, you gain respect as well through your development of your style and your progression of your skills, right? So, you start off and you learn your letter structure, you learn your letters and your tag and your this, and you kind of graduate to the next thing, a throwy, and then...
What's a throwy?
So this is the basic hierarchy of graffiti would be your tag, which is the signature that most people know.
Okay.
And it's probably the thing that can be the most divisive in the graffiti or the public's view, because it infests everything.
Right.
There's tags on everything.
Right.
And because I've always kind of explained it this way too, because it's sort of your intro, the easiest thing you can do, anybody can do it. Grab a marker or a ink and you can do a tag.
Right.
There's more junk out there because of that to sift through to get the good ones.
Right.
But a good hand style to a graffiti artist is like the best. I'll
Really?
take that over a mural. If you got a crazy hand style that's so good, like
me.
I got goosebumps. So the hand style is the essence. If you got a good hand style, then we're moving, right? But you got to develop it, and there's only one way to have a good hand style, and that's to do it. You have to do it. And different surfaces, different mediums kind of lend it in different ways, and it works anyway. So you start to learn these things, and then so going back to the hierarchy, you've got a tag, which most people are familiar with,
right? And
then the next would be a throwy, and a throwy would be the bubble letters or the simple things that you see. That's a throwy. And that's because, you do it large, you do it fast, you're in, you're out, And then you move on to what we start to see blockbusters and pieces, which is where you start to see
scenes.
The cooler letters, the letters with the more colors and the things like that.
Yeah.
There's different sort of variations of that, from straight letters to funk letters and so on and so forth. But that's where we get, the graffiti that most people know about and go, oh, I like that,
Yeah.
And then from there, then we move on to productions, and productions are basically where you have your whole graffiti crew do an entire wall. So it'll consist of several graffiti pieces and a background and characters and the full shebang. So that's 0 to 60.
Wow. And is there like music, like rap, for example, there's East Coast, West Coast.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that same in graffiti, or is it like,
well, we don't have a beef. Right? There's no rift between East
I would
Coast
think
and,
like that, there's a little more unity.
But there is definitely style indications of East Coast versus West Coast. East Coast style is more what we in graffiti would call like traditional, like funk is what we call it. And it would be artists like Cess or Zephyr or Scene. The very traditional kind of bars, the way they come off and the arrows and the way they do their fills. That would be an East Coast, is really heavy on the funk. And then in West Coast, we started to see newer styles develop with people like the MSK crew and AWR and MTA. And they started to kind of incorporate more of the Latino placa style into their funk and their graffiti. So they, they'll have more sort of like these weird stems and stuff going inside their bars, and they'll have stretched out, more organic looking graffiti. It looks more alive than the East Coast is more rigid and like angular.
Isn't that so interesting? But it makes sense, right? Like it's like an accent, right?
Right.
Like it's going to just emerge organically.
That's a great analogy to that, like an accent.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you can have it exist all over. People pick it up and whatever. And especially nowadays with the internet and things like that, you might not necessarily be able to go, oh, he's from wherever.
Right.
Especially the Europeans. The Europeans have done a great job in tradition, holding on to the tradition of, East Coast funk graffiti.
Right.
There's some amazing guys out there.
I am telling you, the most beautiful graffiti I have ever seen was in a tunnel in Barcelona, like for a bicycle tunnel. And it was just, I think very traditional. I don't know, I'm not a graffiti expert, but it was like, the base was, it said fuck money, right? And then it was all connected to this, for some reason, incredibly beautiful ATM, right? But it had colors and life and movement. And I will never forget it. I have a picture on my phone. It was just really amazing. So is graffiti, like our style of graffiti in the United States, does it influence other countries?
Yes.
We're so cool.
But yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's what I say. The Europeans, there's a bunch of them that have held on to that tradition where they're doing it, the same way or the same styles that existed, really from the early 80s on. I mean, they technically, if anybody's watching, it started in the 70s, but the 80s is where it got its footing, that the style that we rely on today.
Yeah. So how did you get from, this really cool, like unknown to me world of graffiti art and creating into, I guess it's a natural transition into like the big, beautiful murals that we see on the sides of buildings in a hotel, down at the Line, I think is one of your...
the Van Zant.
Van Zant, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how did that happen?
Or
did people start offering you money?
That was basically it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Code cracked.
It was organic on my part. It just led into it. I did study art. I've done art my whole life. So, I can't say that this is a uniform thing with all graffiti artists. But for me in particular, I was always an artist. And I was drawn into graffiti in high school. And for me, I did start to take a traditional art path. I did graphic design and in my early 20s. And then I just got burnt out. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. And I realized it was taking away from my art because I would do corporate art all day and then come home and not want to do anything, eat dinner and chill out, And so I actually quit and went and was like, I'm going to be a barista or whatever job I can get and do art. And that's what I did. And through just doing it and maintaining to do graffiti as well as my regular art, that's where it just slowly, I worked on my skills to get to a point where I felt like I was a viable person for people to hire. I didn't want to put myself out there, until I was ready. Which can be, a good and a bad thing. I think some people hold themselves back longer because they're like, oh, it's not ready. And it's like, no, it's ready.
Yeah. All artists are like that. Yeah.
And then, we would do these events on South Congress where we would live paint, and we were just doing it for ourselves to have a party basically. and people started to kind of notice what we were doing.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
And
the end of it.
For people who are listening, like this is like you are a maestro, right, of murals. Like you are a very, very important artist in this area,
Yeah.
right, and beyond too. But I think this is where you're from, Houston. Is that
Originally,
right?
yeah.
And now, like, I'm sure Houston influenced a lot of your graffiti work.
It did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think so. So how do you, like, this is the artist's conundrum, right? How do you stay true to your art and your art form, balancing that with business?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ages-old question. I don't know the answer.
I don't know if I have the answer.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, that was something that I struggled and battled with, most of my, especially early career, especially in graffiti too, like, keeping it real or whatever,
Right.
like don't want to sell out. But I think for me, being true to yourself is what matters, because I think ultimately that's the question about selling out.
Yeah.
Is you're selling yourself out. You're not being who you are.
Right.
And as long as you stay there, it does, we all need to make money and we all need to work, and I think too was overcoming those sort of thoughts in the sense that at the end of the day, I'm getting to do art, right? I could work this office job to make ends meet, and at least I'm not selling out. There becomes I guess to a degree, some compromising, but I guess for me, I drink Coke, so whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
All right, cool. But I get to do me. I get to
Yeah.
paint my stuff
Yeah.
or whatever, right? So, and I get to do what I do.
Right.
Versus maybe, I don't know, I can't think of an example, but there might be a company, I don't know. I don't want to get crazy words. I was going to say dog killers or us. I don't want
Right.
to work
No,
for them,
don't
right?
work for
Yeah,
them.
but you know what I mean? But for the most part, we tend to utilize, most of us tend to live in the world where we use these resources and these things. And, so as long as I get to do what I do and them hire me for me,
Right.
then I don't.
It's kind of a win-win. Like
Right.
there's no downside for anyone. So the haters can just shut the fuck up, right?
I think the haters are just losers.
Yeah, I think
you
they're
know?
just, yeah.
I think a lot of it's based in envy.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of haters are just envious.
Yeah.
They wish, why am I not there? Or what?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those though, where, I was in that place at one point too, where I kind of hated on, and then I realized it was like, because I was jealous essentially,
Right.
and then it's like, if you just put the blinders on and stop worrying about what everybody else is
Exactly.
doing and do what you got to do,
Yep.
then it'll happen.
Exactly.
All the rest is noise, and that's the way I look at
It
it.
is so important. Like the entrepreneurs I've talked to and small business, the creators, that is the one connecting theme is that you have to shut off the haters, right? Because it's toxic for your
Yeah.
creativity, right? And it's easy to say it. I think it's harder to do it because we're, so much a dopamine hit addicted culture right
Yeah.
now. Like just the sadness that you see when somebody says something mean.
Yeah.
One of the, looking at your murals, okay, and you can tell me if I'm totally off base,
Okay.
because I'm an amateur armchair art historian, but your style is very Diego Rivera,
Okay.
right? And I
Interesting.
wondered if you had, and also some of the more Costa Rican artists, like the curls and the greens and the brights. Is there an artist that inspires you? Not necessarily a muralist, but where do you get inspiration?
Honestly, I really love Rockwell, Norman Rockwell.
No way.
Yeah, he's like one of my
Thomas
ultimate.
Kincaid too? Or are you
No,
gonna
no Thomas
cap it at
Kincaid. No,
Rockwell?
yeah, Rockwell. No Thomas Kincaid. Josh is gonna love that one. Oh, my best friend. We got all right. J.C. Leindecker, Norman Rockwell.
Why Rockwell? Is it just the piece?
The figurative. For me, one of my things I love about Rockwell is he borderlines caricature and fine art.
Yeah.
Like he captures moments where they're exaggerated just enough where you really feel that moment, but they're realistic. They're not.
I have never thought that about like, Norman Rockwell. Like it's just, we're just kind of like, oh, American propaganda, that sort of thing. But really you're right. And who else has inspired you?
I was inspired a lot, earlier on by comics. I love Caravaggio is like huge for me. I love a lot of the Baroque and Renaissance paintings and stuff like that. Yeah, Caravaggio, amazing.
Oh my God.
A little brutal, but
yeah, he was also crazy, but
But I like a lot of that stuff. I like the Baroque and the
that really does come through because it's because of the curves, right? In your work.
I've heard a lot of people say that I have an oil sort of way that I paint, which is I think a compliment, because I'm inspired by the like I said, the Baroque and also the Norman Rockwell and the golden age of illustrators, the Saturday Evening Post, covers and stuff like that. I love, the old ads, the Coke bottles and whatever, I just feel like it was so well done. And, I'm not a huge fan of postmodern stuff. So if you can see, I tend to lean more towards figurative and portraiture stuff. I love, Chuck Close and,
who's really fun? I mean, this is going to sound cheesy, but whatever. It's a podcast. We are cheesy by definition. Toulouse-Lautrec's posters at the Moulin Rouge, that is an
Shen and all that.
Just they were posters like these, put all over, mass produced.
I love all that stuff. Yeah. So like you say, to me, that ties into, granted that was French, but that old poster,
that
the early, with graphic design back then was more illustration based.
Yeah, totally.
Where, now it's, more colors and fonts, you know what I mean? And I as an illustrator, somebody who's been a strong drawer their whole life, I tend to lean towards, those sort of things. And I have a hard time myself with abstract. In fact, I just did a series of paintings where they were my attempt at abstract.
Really?
But they're clouds.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Where are they?
They're showing right now, ironically enough, at the Cloud Tree Gallery in East Austin.
Oh,
it's up right now.
I want to go see them. Yes. Yeah. Are they online?
I don't know if they're online, but the opening was last weekend.
No way.
So the show's up until the 17th.
And that's the thing about like your work, and you work in such vastness of space and canvas. I looked at your stuff online and I was like, this is really pretty, but nothing can prepare you for seeing it in person the first time.
Right.
Totally. It's like, it's the analog experience of art, like just being face to face with the colors and the brush strokes and all of that. So, for anyone who is looking at your stuff online and like going to Instagram and all that, you need to see your work in person. Come see, Mr. Data's work in person.
I agree. I think the work is better in person.
It is.
And I've actually heard that, Amy, before, where people are like, oh, I've liked your stuff and I've done whatever, but then I've went and seen it and was like, oh, whoa.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
Because, and also this I can attribute to graffiti. So in the world of graffiti, like, you got to paint good.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And I remember, in my early days going up and looking at pieces and seeing perfectly sharp lines and being like, how did they do that? It's a spray can. Like, how did they... So I grew up where it has to be, you paint good. There's no faking, no half stepping, you come correct when you come to the wall. Where I've noticed in the digital age, especially with the growth of murals and street arts, that a lot of people are just doing good enough for the gram.
Yeah.
Where,
that is so disappointing.
You'll see a lot of these artists or, even big guys, and you're like, oh man, that's dope. And then you go look at it in person and you're like, oh, wah, wah.
Yeah.
The lines are wonky or whatever, it's sloppy. And I've actually had people, the set, like I want it to be razor sharp in real life. I want it to be perfect, and that doesn't always translate in photos, you know?
No, it doesn't, right? For the scale that you are painting, and the work, the messages that you are, and also the piece like that I love that you were at this intersection. You had like a free canvas that you just, there's between ads, and you got to bring like this piece, in a chaotic spot. I mean, it's just, you have to see it in person to really get the full impact of Mez Data's work. What about this? All right, so, I know a lot of artists. I know a lot of people who, dabble on the side. And, my daughter went to school for sculptor. She's now a taxidermist, so it's all very strange, whatever. But your advice, like, being an artist is hard, right? It's a vow of many things, not just poverty, but truth, and putting your things out there. And it's hard. And, what is your advice to these young artists, right, who, have skill and talent and beautiful, ability to tell stories, but don't want to put it out there, right? Like it's like your shit's on the side of buildings, right? Like it's not like some little tiny painting, in the corner of a gallery. Like, what is your advice to having the confidence to tell your truth and share your truth with world?
Work hard. Honestly, we touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
Shut out the noise.
Shut out the noise.
Don't listen to what these people, constructive criticism, it can be beneficial to have criticism. I think that's a problem too in art world, is especially people close to you. They just want to, oh, that's great. Oh, and you'll never get better.
Right.
If somebody doesn't go, that ear's a little wrong. Ooh, that could be a little more, your color balance is off. But, so you do want a healthy dose of that. But if you work hard and you don't worry about what other people are doing either. And also don't try to please. Don't go for the new thing. Like, right now, hot pink and this is in.
Right.
Don't do that because you're trying to make money or you're trying to sell or you're trying to appeal to people.
Right.
Just do what you do. Find your strengths as well. Find those areas that you gravitate to or that speak to you. Some people are more landscape. I tend to be more portrait and figurative.
Yeah.
So I lean into that more. But it is also healthy to also move out of that, and so that you've got a well-rounded repertoire.
Right.
That's why I like to dabble in landscapes and these other things, so that, I always say my knife's sharp. Like I'm constantly, sharp, keeping my skills up and things like that. So work, be diligent, study, shut out the noise. You have to manifest that confidence as well. I think, we kind of were in the ballpark earlier where we're talking about artists, how we're very different.
Yeah.
A lot of us, we have, confidence is a hard thing for us.
Confidence is hard because it's you're putting your soul out for people to judge.
Right. And it's a very, aside from things like graffiti, it's a very solitude thing, drawing and painting. And then, like you said, now you're about to reveal, this intimate thing. And you're going to get negative, it's tough too, because you're also going to get, like I said earlier, those people that are going to stroke you just because they know you.
That's even, more harmful in some ways.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've actually seen many artists throughout my career that's like their, fault, is too many people have coddled them and not been like, actually, dude, that's a little off, or this needs to be, this can be improved.
Right.
And I think in some instances too, it's not that they, when they can go further, but they've stopped because they've got this misconception that this is good.
Right.
And I think, so it's kind of a weird way to answer that question, but
no, it's important. And I think, like, as we're kind of wrapping this up here, one of the things that you said early on that I think will resonate with artists and creators and entrepreneurs is the whole idea. And it's an insane metaphor, but it works so well because it's visual. It's that graffiti lesson of, you got to do the work. You got to have foundational, this is, you don't just get to go out there and, toss throwies.
Yeah.
You got to earn it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think that's true for, for artists and, do the foundational work, take the criticism and just grow.
Right.
As a human, as a business person, as an artist, it's a life lesson. So
Right.
I want to thank you. I just, to hear the story about graffiti is mind blowing to me. And I've always appreciated it, but I didn't know the history and the stages and the thoughtfulness into, creating that particular art form. And of course, I'm a super fan of yours. So thank you so much for sharing your time.
This was awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.